So tell me, if we have got these aliens, and they are, they come down and let's just assume, because it is very easy to ridicule alien abductees from what they say. It's very simple, I'm light-hearted about the whole alien thing. I think it's very ignorant for us to think that there is no other life on any other planet, and I also think it's pretty ignorant to think that they actually aren't. That this life is not more evolved than us and could actually potentially come to Earth and look at us. So I think it's all a huge possibility. But it's like the ghost thing, until you actually see it yourself, you're relying on other people's testimony, which some of it you've got to go, yeah, I'm with that, and then others you've got to go, oh, it's a bit...
Well, the most, probably the most prolific incident in this country was the Linda Jones abduction in Disbury. It took place in the 1970s. She's a good friend of mine now.
It's not far from here, is it? Right?
It isn't, no. It was literally by the Mersey, the Mersey Canal River. And she was, in the summer, walking a friend home with her son and her daughter. And she said goodbye to him, and then she decided to take a walk through the fields because she had a book with us on wildflowers. That was her interest. And she saw this thing come flying down from the sky. And she ended up with missing time, which she couldn't account for initially. But her daughter does remember the incident, and her son remembered the incident, and they were psychologically disturbed through that incident. There was lots of evidence to support that something had actually happened. But what was so unique about her experience, she didn't see grey aliens, she didn't see a flying disc. She saw something which was in her opinion, looked biblical. Like girders and structures and beings with pale complexion, almond-shaped eyes. But it was just totally profound. But there's huge amounts of evidence to support the fact that something actually happened. And those experiences, strange experiences happened. I mean, a couple of weeks after that, she ended up having to ring the police because they kept seeing somebody stood in the back garden. Now, the police investigated it a couple of times, and they gave chase. They actually, on one occasion, gave chase to something which apparently just disappeared.
So the police actually saw whatever it was?
There was actually a police report on the incident. And what else is also interesting is that under hypnosis, because at that time, during those incidents, I mean, we don't use hypnosis now because it's used to elicit the truth, really, unfortunately.
People are very susceptible to...
Of course, you can lie under hypnosis. Yeah. But, of course, in the 70s, late 70s, we didn't know that. We used to use hypnosis like, oh, fantastic, truth serum. And, but she did recount under hypnosis that when this object came down in a nearby field, she watched people approaching this object, and it's so profound. They were wearing bowler hats and suits and carrying a case, and they all looked pretty much identical, and yet they were all sort of slowly making their way to this object, which is sat in the middle of a field. I've never heard anything like it, and that's what makes it such an interesting case, because if you're going to fabricate something, you go with stereotypical stuff which is around at that time, and what was around at that time is grey aliens, dish-shaped objects, flying saucers, nothing like this. It was so profound. We interviewed her daughter. I mean, she was that scared. She actually wet herself. She was, her son was 7 years old. He was psychologically disturbed by the incident. They all remember the incident, and the missing time was involved, the incidents that followed after that. Absolutely profound. And what's also interesting, someone came and lifted and took about 4 inches of the soil away where this object came down, to a point where there's literally a hole there now which gathers water, because you can actually see where they've removed it. And nobody knows why and how that happened, but it happened about 2 days after the event.
You see, that's the type of account that as I said earlier, that I used to, a few years ago, I would be quite flippant with people who said, oh, I've been abducted by an alien, or I've seen it. So I would literally think, yeah, all right. Because it always seemed to be a certain type. But what I didn't realise is a certain type was usually the people who are after publicity, because they're the ones you see. They're the ones you see all the time, on TV, spouting their stories out to anyone who will listen. And those stories change on a fairly regular basis. And I think that something like that, especially someone like you say you know as well, so you have a personal connection with this person. You know whether someone's telling the truth or whether they're telling a little bit of a porky.
Well, the story's never changed since the 1970s.
The thing with this as well, I mean, obviously I was a bit too young at the time and I wasn't doing what we do now, but I've had access to all the files, I've had access to the information. We actually published the full account, the article in the magazine that Steve and myself produced. It's there for everybody to see, and to be honest, it's changed my perception of alien abductions. It's everything, as Steve says, is so profound. It's you can't not believe what has been taking place.
Well, just that one account has made me look. I mean, it's not that I don't believe it. I do believe in people's testimony. It'd be very arrogant of me not to believe in people. You know, who am I to say somebody's lying or not? But the trouble is, I've heard so many lies, and so many people have been proved that you do sit back. And sometimes it's those kind of attention-seeking, publicity-seeking people that ruin it. I mean, this is not just in alien abduction. This is across the board in the paranormal. You know, people who've seen Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, ghosts, aliens. You know, it's those that actually kind of make almost cynics out of people, where they aren't cynics. They just want that kind of proof. I mean, that's something that is. But I know there's something I wanted to bring up, which was Dr. Susan Blackmore. I was looking at her website the other day and looking into this, the European Journal of UFO and Abduction Studies, where they're talking about. This ties in with what you were saying earlier about the hypnagogic, hypnopompic sleep states.
Yeah, she's right. I mean, there are things that can be done now where it can be induced in laboratories.
Well, this thing, the whole thing says, you know, that in a recent Roper poll, 4 million Americans have reported that they've been abducted. They reckon that that's probably been inflated. I have to say that.
Of course,
but,
it has, yeah.
But the main increase has come since 1981. Strangely enough, the same time as the Hopkins book, Missing Time, came out. And again, this goes back to what we were saying before. That
I think if they did that Roper poll now, it would be statistically a huge difference.
Do you think it would be lower?
Absolutely, yes, definitely.
By how much do you think?
Oh, probably a fraction.
80%, 90% lower?
I think, you know, they did the Roper poll at the time when it was the alien abduction was at its height and, you know, at his most known. And everybody thought it was someone, you know, you had to be someone special if you could report that you had those experiences.
I just want to go into a little bit of the poll after the break and just go into what their findings were. So please don't go away, and we'll be right back.